Zaidi versus Stevens. So Grixis Shadow, in a lot of ways, it looks like it mentioned it's a traditional Grixis Delver list, but using Death's Shadow instead of Delvers.
Right.
And Todd does have the 4 Ghost Quarter package as well here.
Okay. And the thing about the Grixis Shadow deck versus other builds of Grixis, very light on basic lands, only an island and a swamp. Assuming that Stevens has been doing his homework, and with the Zaidi leading on the swamp, those Ghost Quarters could be wastelands.
Yeah, you see, so Todd starting off on Noble Hierarch. Now Bolt the Bird happening from Zaidi's side. This time it's Fatal Push for the Bird. Todd will respond with Tarmogoyf.
Todd Stevens a big fan of casting Blood Moons. I assume that he is giddy to Ghost Quarter an opponent out of the game.
Yeah, so Todd actually has a passing commitment to that in the main deck. He has a copy of Azusa Lost But Seeking as a 1-of, and a 1-of Crucible of Worlds in the main deck today to go with his 4 Ghost Quarters.
It's pretty hard to recover from that 3-card combination.
That's something I would expect to see out of a sideboard. I think it's really neat that Todd has it in the main right now.
That's something I would expect to see out of a cube draft.
That sounds great. Steam Vents for Zaidi will give him access to all 3 colors. Yeah, what is interesting, I think, for Todd here, he does have his main deck Azusa in his hand, is what is Azusa going to do when he doesn't have Ghost Quarter, or doesn't have, say, Crucible of Worlds?
It will be a 3-mana 1/2.
Yeah. Serum Visions from Zaidi draws him a copy of Thoughtseize. Also has a copy of Death's Shadow in his hand. So this is, and this is something which we've gotten to right now in Modern, where the fair decks are all starting to pick up Death's Shadow. It's no longer this wonky combo card. It's just kind of a good value 1-drop.
Right. Not too difficult for Death's Shadow to outsize Tarmogoyf. The other thing that Sousa does, Stevens does have 4 copies of Courser of Crufix. That makes it pretty easy to find spells on the top of your deck. Just play up to 3 lands off the top.
Ooh, I like that a lot.
That's a pretty powerful interaction.
Thoughtseize from Zaidi. Yeah, 4 Courser of Crufix is a ton. We'll get a look at Todd's hand. It is 2 more lands, Azusa, and Collected Company.
Pretty easy pick with this Thoughtseize.
Yeah, I think Collected Company's gone.
Now, typically, if your Modern opponent is casting Azusa Lost But Seeking, they're trying to kill you with an Amulet of Vigor on the following turn. So you might be used to losing to the game to this card. Todd Stevens is not playing a deck that necessarily makes that happen. Take a minute, think about the fact that your opponent played Noble Hierarch and Tarmogoyf. The Azusa's probably not terribly threatening.
He takes Collected Company. I mean, if you aren't familiar with the list, it is a bit puzzling, right? You think, okay, as most decks don't play Azusa in a fair way.
Right.
And that's what Todd is more or less doing. I mean, I guess his interactions aren't fair, but he is a fair deck. You know, he's not going to do the Amulet Bloom thing where he plays Azusa and then just makes, 10 mana and kills you that turn. It'll be Azusa, make an extra land drop.
Even Azusa Ghost Quarter on this turn could put Zaidi off of red mana. Just go for that Steam Vents. These Grixis decks, if you suspect that they're playing Death Shadow, there's usually not a basic mountain. The deck really wants to deal additional damage to itself with untapped duels.
So yeah, I mean, we did get to see a great ramp spell here, Azusa on turn 3, and Todd actually does have 2 more lands here, so make the Temple Garden tapped and a Ghost Quarter.
Getting maximum value out of his Azusa, not getting maximum value out of his deck. Obviously, we would prefer to have spells.
And this isn't, he's going to Ghost Quarter away the Swamp main phase. So now the question is there a second Swamp in Zaidi's deck? No. Now, does Zaidi have any black mana sources?
Yeah, see if he has one in his hand.
His basics are 1 island, 1 swamp. So now that the swamp's in the graveyard and the island in play, the remaining 3 Ghost Quarters are just strip mines.
Mm-hmm. Stevens chose to go for black mana over red mana. That turns off any of the delve threats. It turns off Fatal Push. Discard, not really a factor here, but if Zaidi can't produce a black source, he can't really play this game anymore.
And it's not just that. Zaidi can't produce a land. He actually just passes back to Todd. And damage is going to be pretty strong here. You see another swing from Todd. Draw of Kolagun's Command is going to save him. Zaidi went down to 6 on that.
He's got a grip full of black spells and a Snapcaster Mage that couldn't flash anything back.
How about that Ghost Quarter from Todd Stevens? That's That's not a play that you'll always see. Players just on turn 3 ghost quartering someone's basic, but it's really paid off for Todd.
It was a really heads-up play by Stevens, and really back-breaking in that capacity there.
For Zaidi, no choice but to chump block the Tarmogoyf.
And that is just the cost of playing this Grixis Shadow list. You don't want Mountain in your deck. You literally never want to draw it, but there are situations, maybe you get Path to Exiled, you get Ghost Quarters, and you kind of wish that it could always be in your deck.
Renegade Rallier from Stevens just played as a 3/2, no Revolt. But another black spell drawn from Zaidi, and that is going to be the game. Todd takes that one. An unfortunate spot where Zaidi got stuck on 2 lands, but if he had access to the swamp, it may have been just fine.
Right. And this is why you see Wasteland is not legal in the modern era of Magic.
Well, and it wasn't even Wasteland, right? He got another land to replace it.
Oh, sure.
It just, I mean, all Todd just changed the color of one of his mana sources, and that got him the whole game.
Would you rather have 2 colorless mana or 1 mana that matters?
So Todd Stevens will take game 1 over Jibraeel Zaidi. Looking at the sideboards here, we'll go to that for both players. Starting on Jibraeel's side, Fulminator Mages, Collective Brutalities, 2 Liliana the Last Hope, that's the new one from Shadows. Kozilek's Return, Terminate, Nile Spellbomb, Kolaghan's Command. Some amount, now what I was interested in is you talked about counter magic versus removal. Removal is not great against the company deck, but these counter spells don't hit creatures. They're, Stubborn Denials and Counter Squalls.
The negate, the spell-only counter spells, not great in this matchup. You want access to a very small number of them. You don't want to get destroyed by collected company, but largely you do just want removal spells. ZD is kind of low on catch-all removal spells. This Terminate in the sideboard is excellent. Liliana the Last Hope is also very powerful in these matchups. If you suspect a lot of Voice Resurgence, Kitchen Finks, if you just have some 1-for-1 spot removal to deal with the base creature, Liliana can actually clean up the leftovers. I have won these matchups with the Liliana emblem. It's really fun. Depending what you think Stevens is up to, you might see the Nile Spellbomb come in. It's not particularly good against a specific configuration. It kind of waxed and waned on Collective Brutality. It has some very good spots and some very bad spots.
So the Nile Spellbomb would be good against, namely, the Crucible of Worlds in Todd's deck. The question I would have is, when Jibraeel has seen a card, he's seen Azusa game 1. Can he put the pieces of the puzzle together and figure out what that means?
Right. Stevens' deck looks pretty similar to an Abzan Company kind of a creature combo deck, when really he's just playing a totally fair game. So you kind of have to navigate that, figure out exactly what disruptive elements you want.
Right. So and that'll be interesting to see how he goes. Now, on Todd Stevens' side, he has a couple of things that can work in this matchup. A lot of his cards look to be answers for unfair decks: Stony Silence, Surgical Extraction, even Engineer Explosives to a point. These fair cards I see at the end: a Whisperwood, a Second Crucible, a Pride Mage, a Mind Sensor. I mean, any of these coming in?
Whisperwood, I imagine, will come in. It's just a really great way to insulate yourself against 1-for-1 removal spells. Engineered Explosives is great dealing with Death Shadows. Blessed Alliance, kind of hilarious against Death Shadow. And ZD not packing spell snares, he's going to be particularly vulnerable to a spell like this.
So interesting, if Todd's boarding in removal, it seems like he might actually become the more controlling deck in this matchup.
Certainly has the capacity to do that. This matchup's going to be about attrition. There's going to be less defined beatdown versus aggressive rolls. You're going to see that shift a lot with the texture of the game.
Okay. So if that's about attrition, then maybe that Second Crucible is worth talking about.
It's an option. I expect that Stevens is bringing in some number of Surgical Extractions to catch Snapcaster Mage, which is really ZD's best card in this matchup.
Sure.
It's a way to potentially 2-for-1 if you can actually trade the Snapcaster Mage with the creature. There's, of course, the Kolaghan's Command value.
Well, we are now live over on Twitch.tv, and we'll be here all weekend. So come join us over in the feature match area at the Star City Games Tour. Right now, you can, of course, watch us as you are right now. We also have our You Decide the quarterfinals, which is for subscribers getting to vote on the matches and players they want to see during the eliminations tomorrow. You get custom emoticons and badges with our subscription program, and that's all available at the website here, twitch.tv/SCGTour. Jibraeel Zaidi is going to be on the play for the second game, both players keeping 7 again.
Starting with the fetch land, a lot more powerful than starting with a basic land out of this deck.
Yeah, into Water Grave. And those basics, we do want to keep a count on them. There's just the one swamp, one island. Interestingly, these Death Shadow lists, one thing that they've done that old Death Shadow used to do is the Grixis list. He has 19 lands, but it's 12 fetch lands and only 7 actual mana producers. So cards like Ghost Quarter, you know, Jibraeel has 7 lands that make mana. Todd has 4 Ghost Quarters. Those numbers are a little close for comfort for the Grixis player.
Right, and this low actual mana producing land, it makes a lot of sense for the deck in terms of its goldfish. When you're just playing your game, if you just don't have an opponent, you want to crack fetches, shock yourself with your shock lands, etc. When your opponent starts cracking Ghost Quarters, if they have Path to Exile, Stevens does not have that. Zaidi does not know that.
Right.
That can really tax you.
You know, for example, only 3 of Zaidi's 7 mana producing lands make red. So the idea that Todd would get rid of all the red mana, that's a very reasonable strategy.
Yes.
Inquisition of Kozilek is the play from Jibraeel. We're going to get to take a look at Todd's hand, and yeah, he's packed for a pretty big fight here. He's got only 1 more land in Ghost Quarter, but look at the spells. Courser of Krufix, Collected Company, Whisperwood Elemental, and a pair of removal spells. It looks like he's setting up to kill a bunch of threats and then play some 2-for-1s.
Yes. This is going to be a difficult one to thread here. With the Collected Company and the Whispered Elemental, looking at this hand, the Company is the highest impact card, Whispered Elemental potentially the second highest. You see he goes for the Courser there. It makes a lot of sense. That card can generate a lot of value in its own right, and it requires either a Revolted Fatal Push or a Terminate to deal with. You can't Lightning Bolt that one.
And a nice dodge here for Todd. So it was Courser of Krufix taken. Jibraeel, did not have, say, a Fatal Push or Lightning Bolt, though, for this Noble Hierarch. Todd will go up to 3 mana. And then he says go. Looks like Todd's draw was another copy of Collected Company.
Yikes.
Well, if he top decks a land, it's great. I guess if his Noble Hierarch dies, he might path it in response to try to get up to 4 mana. Right?
I'd be very surprised if he didn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, once he hits 4 mana, his curve is Company, Company, Whisperwood. That's really powerful.
Yes. And this is going to be the spot where Zaidi is going to want to have some number of those negate-esque cards. A Stubborn Denial would do a lot of work for him. He needs some way to deal with that Whispered Elemental if that one comes down.
Yeah, it's so hard to board in those cards, right? Because that's about all it counters. I guess it counters Path to Exiles and Blessed Alliances, but I'm not thrilled from that out of a Grixis deck. Street Wraith is cycled for Zaidi. He goes down to 12. He did pick up a copy of Lightning Bolt, so he'll now have an answer to Noble Hierarch.
And he knows that Stevens has that Path to Exile. We'll see if he forces the issue.
It's still a good trade for him, right? If he bolts, and even if he knows that Stevens is pathing the creature, that's probably still a play he makes.
Well, if he has a counterspell for the Path to Exile, this will be really excellent for him.
Yeah, so he bolts it, and then Todd does path his own creature. So it's a 2-for-1 for Zaidi, but Todd now is 1 land away from a stack of Collected Company.
Right.
And also importantly, Zaidi's down to 10. It's between these shock lands, fetch lands, and 2 Street Wraiths. He's done a lot of damage to himself.
There's a number of games where getting the path out of Stevens' hand matters a lot. Zaidi has yet to present a threat.
Right.
That Path to Exile has not started to matter in this game yet.
And Todd draws the untapped land and says go. That's a huge top deck for him. It was another Ghost Quarter. Zaidi has no threats on the board just yet.
And Zaidi has drawn his basic swamp. Only 1 island for basic lands left in the deck. Facing down two Ghost Orders for Stevens now.
Well, his Serum Vision, so he drew Serum Visions and cast it. It did find him a copy of Stubborn Denial, and that seems like it was a very big hit for him.
Yes. He had untapped mana through the entire turn cycle, so there's no point for Stevens to sneak in under the mana, but he just navigated his way into a counterspell.
Says go. Stevens is going to go for a Company. And Zaidi put a Snapcaster Mage on top of his own deck, so he has the second Company covered as well. Needs to dodge another untapped land right now, though.
He does not have a main phase Company covered.
And Todd hits the untapped land again. It's another Ghost Quarter.
That's really bad news, and that Swamp's on the table now.
These last 2 draws of untapped lands, Todd needed them, and they both hit. So Whisperwood resolves and manifests the top card of Todd's deck. That's so big. So ways to kill Whisperwood Elemental. I suppose Grixis, he does have Terminate. Or no, he does not have Terminate.
He has 1 in his sideboard.
As a 5-mana creature, you can't Fatal Push it.
Really looking to combine some combination of Lightning Bolt and Kolaghan's Command or Collective Brutality.
Asking to read Blessed Alliance, Todd shows him it. He did know what's in his hand. And Jibraeel just says, go. This is going to be tough. Draw from Stevens. It's a copy of Engineered Explosives. But he has a swing. This is neat, of just 2, so he's holding back Whisperwood here.
Potentially Snapcaster Mage blocking, flashing back Lightning Bolt would deal with that.
Sure, no reason to be, as long as this Whisperwood stays alive, there's no way Todd loses, no reason to be more aggressive, as he just manifests another card.
And this provides him with potentially lethal attack on the following turn just by sitting tight.
Snapcaster Mage giving flashback to Lightning Bolt. I wonder if Todd is going to go for a Collected Company right now.
He could go for Collected Company. He could also go for this double Wasteland play that he has access to, giving 3 Ghost Quarters and 1 Swamp over there.
Yeah, just lets Jibraeel untap. And I suppose that makes sense. Todd still has control of the board. No reason to make a move just yet.
Collected Company is certainly mighty good.
And at this point, the Snapcaster into Stubborn Denial doesn't counter Collected Company. He has 5 mana.
Yeah, Ferocious does not check the total power of creatures, so 2 Snapcaster Mage does not get you there.
It was Formidable? Was that the one that checked if you had 8?
Yes.
The old school teamer mechanic back in the days of Dragons worked that way.
Torrential Gearhulk Stubborn Denial would work. Not enough lands or the correct cards in the deck to cast that one.
Torrential Gearhulk's a very ferocious creature.
Formidable.
No, Ferocious, right? Ferocious is the 4-check. Formidable is the 8.
Sure.
Well, he's both. I mean, he's mostly Formidable also. He's
just in terms of strict adjectives, he's more formidable than ferocious.
I don't know. I think the rules might disagree. Some more lands here for Zaidi. He got 2 damage in off the Snapcaster Mage, but now Todd will go for that end-step Collected Company, and that's going to work. Zaidi was trying to find another answer by snapping a Serum Visions out of his graveyard, but look at this value here. Knight of the Reliquary and Courser of Krufix off Collected Company.
That'll help him control his draw step potentially here if he wants to use that Knight of the Reliquary. Of course, he's so far ahead on life totals, doesn't really have to think about making plays like that.
Yeah, well, what he could do is if he wants to control his draw step, he might Ghost Quarter Zaidi during his own upkeep. I suppose he could go for himself to shuffle. Yeah, he doesn't need to do any of this, does he?
No, he really just needs to turn these creatures sideways.
Yeah. I was thinking they were fetch lands. If we had a fetch land in play, you could use a control that way, but... Fatal Push. Going to be cast on Knight of the Reliquary, still on end step. Did use a fetch land to make that Revolt enabled. But Todd still gets to keep the Courser, and now it'll net him some free cards. A Forest off the top of the deck.
Picked up Engineered Explosives, could set that to 2 and make an unchecked lethal swing here.
Certainly can try to win the game. He's going to go ahead and Ghost Quarter away. And you see those basics. He's going to Ghost Quarter away the Blood Crypt, and you see Jibraeel, no search. So now Todd will go for the island. Jibraeel will float a mana. Engineered Explosives on 2. Sacrifice it. The Snapcaster Mages are dead. The swing is for 8. Jibraeel is at 7. And that's going to be game and match for Todd Stevens. An impressive showing here by Green-White Company. Jibraeel's, that second game looking really impressive. Jibraeel's draw was full of Thought Seizes and removal spells, and it didn't seem particularly close.